morning, y'all. This IT Live brought to you by Academy Sports and Outdoors. I hate this mirrored camera. This is Ian Boyd. This is Texas Homer. It's a Wednesday show. Ian made us a nice graphic of the toughest games of the schedule ranked. So we're going to go through that, talk about that, and then we're going to check in on our friends at Arkansas who are not in a good place, unfortunately. And if they turn over Pittman, maybe they get something new. We'll see. But it's not looking good because everyone basically treated them like a G5 and just poached all their players, especially Ole Miss. And we got a pass rusher from them as well. Roaster, good morning. What is up, Splendid Daddy? How are you, man? All right. Let us begin, Ian.
Aren't you an honorary muchacho?
Sure. Yeah, I've been accepted into the Mexican fold. My wife is Mexican.
She's American, right?
What'd you say?
Isn't she American?
Right. She is American. Yeah, she's first generation.
First generation. Okay.
Yeah, she's first generation.
More recent.
But it's great, man. Mexicans are fun people, man. And their food is incredible. Last Sunday was my father-in-law's birthday. Fajita grill out, dude. You can't beat it, man. It's incredible.
Wait, so when they do stuff, is it a little more, is it like Tex-Mexy or is it more like legit Mexican?
It's a mix. There's definitely like a cultural blend there. Like there will be hamburgers and hot dogs and all the kind of Americana stuff. It just depends. Sometimes her mom is cooking stuff.
Right?
What'd you say?
Aren't fajitas a little more Tex-Mexy?
I have no idea, really.
If you go to Mexico, it's not like fajitas is not like the thing. Maybe Splenda will let us know.
Well, it depends, right? Like if her mom's cooking something from her childhood, then it's going to be like classic Mexican food, something that we wouldn't really even know in Texas.
Right.
But yeah, there's a lot of that blend and like cultural exchange going on for sure. All right. I'm trying to skip past your list real quick.
We both have a lot to offer in terms of food. Both the Southern Anglo and the Norteño each have quite a bit.
There's a real handshake between Texas and Mexico when it comes to grilling meats. They both have a deep appreciation for that. And her mom's like quarter Italian too. So like you've got Italian and Mexican, like that's a cooking powerhouse culture there. So yeah, it was awesome. And we go there every Sunday for like family dinner. It's always great. All right. Let's talk about your number 12, Ian. University of Texas, El Paso. Why are they the worst ranked team on this list?
I did very little research into UTEP, but I noted that they are in Splendid Dad, you keep bringing this up. He was blaming the newfound Anglo appreciation for Topo Chico for driving the price up.
Yeah.
Let me tell you though, Splendid Daddy, in Texas, I believe whites are now the second largest demographic.
Yeah.
So a lot more of y'all now. So if you want to know why the price of Mexican food is going up, take a look in the mirror. Take a look in the mirror.
Yeah.
Anyway, UTEP. They were like 3-9 last year in year one, and the new head coach, Scotty Walden. They had Dana DeMel, who was one of Bill Snyder's dudes for a long time. I think that's the worst job in college football. I think it's extremely hard to build a good team out there. And it's hard for me to believe that a 3-9 team from last year is going to be meaningfully better, especially when they do find a good player, they usually get portaled. And I just don't trust their ability to rebuild. Like Sam Houston State, everybody's telling me like, hey, their defense got pillaged in the portal. Okay, I'm sure that's true. I don't have any doubt. But Sam Houston State has like a long tradition of caring about football and evaluating and recruiting Southeast Texas. And so I have a lot more faith in their ability to reload. Plus they have their quarterback back who's a dual threat, and they have Phil Longo coming in as head coach. And like I know Phil Longo looked really bad in the land of Frost Giants trying to run the air raid up in Wisconsin in the last couple of years. But Sam Houston State is going to be a way better fit for the kinds of things he wants to do. So I've been arguing with people on the board, mostly like Joe and Paul, about which of these three teams are like.
I was going to say Paul. Yeah, Paul feels like Sam Houston State's going to be dead last.
Yeah, I don't think it's actually a meaningful question because I don't think
because all these teams are going to get beat by 30 points.
So there's not really going to be no one's going to win. You know, like we're all going to look back and it's like, Ian, you were clearly wrong because UTEP lost 42-10 when they scored in garbage time, and Sam Houston lost 56-6. So you're so dumb. It's like exactly. And vice versa. Like none of us are really going to have an argument unless the scenario I paint for Sam Houston State, where they kind of hang around until the Thunderstruck drone show or whatever they do this year in the third and fourth quarter. But yeah, I think UTEP is a terrible job. I have no faith in their ability to reload. I do have faith in Sam Houston State's ability to reload. San Jose State is interesting. Connor, I've noticed recently that a lot of talent slips through the cracks out of the Bay Area. And people like Gavin Holmes, I believe. No, that's not right. It was that other guy. Texas got this other corner last year out of San Jose State that I thought was pretty good. He didn't end up playing very much.
Javian Cole or whatever.
Yep. Cal routinely has good players that get poached. Can't hold on to them because they're in administration. No one there really cares about football. But they have like the greater Bay Area, especially as you get inland in California, is still loaded with like suburbs that play football. Cal Injuries was a walk-on at Cal. Jack Injuries was a walk-on at Cal. Jack Injuries is clearly really good. I think that area gets super under-recruited and under-scouted. I think that Oakland area, there's a lot of athletes there. And I think inland, there's like a lot of suburbs that actually still care about football. And people just don't seem to go there very much. So it seems like whenever you watch San Jose State, they routinely have a lot of pretty good players that were like total unknowns in recruiting. And it's like, how come they have a 4-4-40 corner that can play man coverage? And it's like, well, because no one knew. Or he came up through the local junior college after he was like ineligible out of high school or whatever, and now he's really good. And their school system didn't pass him through for football purposes like they would, maybe somewhere else in the South.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So I actually think San Jose State, I basically almost ranked these in terms of what I think their relative strength as a program is.
Yeah, it's fair. Like you said, the comment earlier, we're arguing about who's going to get beat by 50 and 40. San Jose State, too, they lost their top two wide receivers. They lost Nick Nash. I think he was undrafted free agent or something. And then their number two receiver is also a 1,000-yard receiver. So they're having to replace that. Joe did an awesome video with their head coach. Go check that out. Really cool guy.
It's Kenny Mitsulilo, right?
Yep. And
he ran the flex bone at Navy for like 15
years. But he's really versatile because we were basically, Joe brought it up, hey, you kind of played the service school style of football, but you're not doing that at San Jose State. He's like, yeah, it's all based on your talent and also tradition of the school and that kind of stuff too. So he was really cool and humble, and he knew he had a tall task ahead of him type of thing. But that was a really cool interview. We really appreciate him like sitting down and talking to us very candidly about his team and his philosophy. So UTEP, I think they had some good edges or a good edge. He got poached. That's just kind of the nature of it. Me and Paul did a little thing on it that once these kids get any kind of shine, you're just auditioning for the big dogs, and they immediately go and pluck them off. So I've heard Sam Houston State's really going to struggle, but I agree with you that Sam Houston State does at least have this history of really caring about football and competing at a high level in their league. So we'll see.
Don't they have a rivalry down there too that's like super intense? I remember somebody made a joke because Tom Herman had some background with like Sam Houston State or the other school in the rivalry. I can't remember. And somebody like mentioned that his history with rivalry games, and he mentioned that game.
Yeah.
And the Austin press corps all laughed, and he's like, "You laugh, but they take it pretty seriously down there."
Yeah.
I can't remember who it was. There's some school that they're like
just us being elitist again. There are no rivalries outside of Power 5, man. Those dude, rivalry games are awesome no matter what level you're at, even high school,
Texas State
2A to 6A. What do you think of Texas State going to the Pac?
If a tree falls in a forest. What conference were they in before?
I don't even know.
Let's see exactly.
But they don't have a great history of football. I have my whole dad's side of the family is from San Marcos, so I spend a lot of time there. I'll be there next week. I love the city. It's a great little town. So I'm just excited for the added money it can bring to the city. I think that's cool. And then, man, getting Kenny was at the perfect time. Their president or AD or somebody was on who Smokes channel. He does the 365 or whatever. They do a good job over there. I was watching that interview, and they were like, they've been plotting this for 3 years, this move. And they're like, all right, we got to get Kenny first. It was like very deliberate how they were able to do it. So I think it's interesting, and it's good for Texas State. And like I said, they'll end up taking 1 or 2 of our depth players each year just from that association alone.
That's the new frontier for some of the emerging Texas high school programs. There's North Austin, where I am. There's like lots of, but you got like Vandegrift, One State. It's like a relatively new school. Lake Travis is not even that old. And then Westlake for forever. And then Liberty Hill, obviously. But down there, like, there's like a New Braunfels school. It's pretty legit. They just built a new one. Is New Braunfels the one that's like been competing deep into the playoffs? You wouldn't know, would you?
No, I don't pay attention to that region of high school.
Well, it's
more
like
DSW.
It's an emergent region because it's just one of those places where like young family, they're building tons of stuff. Young families are moving out there like they are up here. And those are the places where, like, especially if you get like a working class families that super care about athletics and they want their kids to be in good programs and they can't afford to live in Westlake or Lake Travis, that's like a sweet spot for an emerging program.
So I think it'll be cool. And we were talking to Paul yesterday, but we were going to just Texas OU was going to destroy college football, but since then a ton of G5s have been able to move up in rank. It's actually improved the standing of a lot of schools. So we'll see. They're still going to get their players poached, but as far as eyes on TV and better contracts, this move has actually benefited the G5 in a lot of ways. All right.
It's bad for the schools that have made their living on grafting behind like Texas and OU. But for like schools that didn't do that or weren't allowed to do that, like SMU or UTSA or whoever, it's
it's solid. All right. So UTEP last, San Jose State, Sam Houston State. Okay, cool. Let's get into the meat of SEC play. And then, of course, Ohio State's going to be down here somewhere. So last in our SEC competition, you have Arkansas. And we're going to talk a little bit more in depth in Arkansas, so don't give them all the juice here. We'll talk more in depth on them later. But just know that Ian thinks that they're going to be our weakest SEC opponent. All right, moving to number 8 at Kentucky. Man, Stoops looks like Walking Dead right now, unfortunately. I mean, you lose Dane Key, you lose Berrien Brown. The quarterback play last year was atrocious. Of course, you pump fake to go to A&M, take the deal. A&M revolts. Now you have to turn back, walk into your team, and then the next day at workouts preach culture and sticking to it and all of the stuff that just immediately rings hollow now. Man, he did dirty. I thought that was a really gross thing that A&M did there. But hey, as far as competition, A&M was able to take out a plucky program. So if you're talking art of war, I guess it was a successful move.
At least they didn't have to hire Mark Stoops.
Yeah.
I'm totally on A&M's side, actually.
I'm okay with them just not hiring him. It's not cool to hire him and then have
there was the athletic director did it. And he obviously did not have the approval he needed to execute that move. Like that guy, just a complete clown. Is he the guy that's at Ohio State now too, right?
Yeah.
I cannot wait to see what happens if and when he has to replace Ryan Day if he's still there.
Yeah. Yeah, he's the one that did the legendary, like, A&M does not want Texas in the SEC. The iconic line. So Kentucky in a rough spot. And like we said, the players that they did have that were really good got poached. Their nose, that was a real big deal, went pro. There's just not a lot here.
Oh, they had another big nose that went to USC too.
Okay. Yeah, so they're just – it's not looking great for Kentucky and likely Stoops last year. The fans are apathetic, man. Joe did a video with KSR, Kentucky Sports Radio, and they were very funny. They were like, you guys are coming to Lexington, so have fun. You can go to the horse races. Here's where you can go taste the distilleries. Y'all are going to have a great time, and you're going to have a great time at the game. Like, the fans are like already very resigned to this is not working. It's probably going to result in a coaching change.
I'd like to get up there and get some Buffalo Trace. Stuff is impossible to find in stores down here.
Yeah, it would be an interesting game to travel to, but any other kind of thoughts on Kentucky?
One other thought is that they had like a really good offensive year a couple of years ago because they hired Liam Cohen from I think he's from like the Shanahan tree. I don't remember. I may have it written down somewhere. And Liam Cohen came in, and Kentucky had just like a breakout offensive year. Finally, we're like smash mouth, able to run the ball like Mark Stoops has always wanted. And then he left to take another NFL gig, and they collapsed. And then that like didn't go great or something. So he came back the next year as offensive coordinator again, and they shot back up, and they were good again, and they knew what they were doing. And then he left, and then they completely cratered again. And just like Mark Stoops has had like maybe like 3 or 4 years at Kentucky where he had the right guy at offensive coordinator, and his defenses are always usually pretty good. Last year was a little tough because of all the cultural things you just mentioned. But when he doesn't have that, they generally suck. And then they don't have that right now unless this guy that took over last year is going to figure it out, which it doesn't seem like it because they just lost all their firepower.
Basically, if you're on Kentucky's squad this year, you're auditioning for whatever transfer you would like to get. So, any wide receivers that stand out of Kentucky, we're interested. That's going to be kind of the place for Kentucky. Now, doesn't mean they can't rise up and get a W. We're not saying that, but we're talking about consistency in the SEC. They likely will not do well in that regard. Before we keep going, though, guys, in honor of your service and support for our country, Academy Sports and Outdoors is offering military and first responders 10% off your purchase, both in your local Academy Sports and Outdoors and online, all the way up through July 4th. So this Friday, guys, make sure to take advantage of it. Exclusions do apply. Visit academy.com/discount for details. All right, number 7, Vanderbilt. The plucky squad that will likely sink back into irrelevance when Pavia heads out the door. They also got Stowers, the tight end, and me and Paul did a first-round mock yesterday from ESPN. He's mocked in the first round at tight end. So they have that, and then Pavia's fun interview on Bussin' with the Boys was awesome. He's such a fun guy. He gives a real interview. He really went behind the scenes. He was actually geared to go to Nevada with Choate before he got the Vanderbilt offer. So that would have been cool if Choate got him. But it's a fun team, man. It's a fun offense. It's highly systematized. It's all about knowing what's up. Pavia is a good decision maker. He got a little rattled versus us, which was interesting, but he's all moxie, all heart, all the intangibles that fans love about a football player is in Pavia. And then their defense keeps everything in front of them to a fault. They don't give up explosives often, but you can nickel and kind of dime them up the field. But they had a really good game plan versus us. They played like kind of that cover 3, kept everything in front of them, and then they would constantly fire that nickel, so there was never any kind of boots or roll-offs or any of that kind of stuff, and speeding up Quinn's clock and all that stuff. So that's why that game just turned into a series of like 40 checkdowns. It even got tight towards the end. It wasn't like a real threat. Didn't think we were going to lose the game, but they did show that they at least didn't roll over. So Vanderbilt is going to be one of those games that probably when it comes around the season, it's like, be careful here, be careful.
Yeah, it probably depends on the relative state of Diego Pavia. By the time Texas got him last year, he was in pretty bad shape. He still did some remarkable things, but he was not in good shape. I think they figured out last year, though, that if you kind of play zone against him, he's super limited if you're good, disciplined in zone and you're not playing unsound against the option. Because when he's got to throw, and if he has like Colin Simmons or Trey Moore chasing him, and he's got to make an accurate throw, and he's got very limited range, especially if you're playing him in November like this, and he's already been beat up a little bit, he can't really punish you down the field. So you can kind of sit on the hot routes underneath and then like close on the scramble. And he's very gritty, but I don't see it.
Yeah. And yeah, Pavia doesn't have anywhere close to NFL measurables. His arm is not there. He's highly systematized. They have to rely on his running. And like you said, there's so much optionality built into the offense. He's smart, and you have to be able to do your if then that decision making. But as far as just like piecing you up and dropping back and sitting in the pocket and throwing the fade, that's not really his strength. He requires the system to unlock. So that'll be the difference with Vanderbilt. But one of those games, it's not an automatic W like it was. So that's for sure. I am interested to see what happens when he leaves, or if he just sues again and plays for eternity, which would also be interesting. Number 6, Mississippi State. So this is one I totally agree with you on, Ian. So last year it was one of those games where you're beating them bad, but you're like, they died with honor. They were able to stop the run, kind of slow that side down. They would sell out a little bit, and then they kept running on offense. They were doing everything they could to beat a better opponent. They lose Craver, which is significant to A&M. That was their speed receiver. But they are getting Blake Shapen back healthy. And we've seen at Baylor, Shapen has this inability to close games. I would do reviews on him for like 3 years for previews, and he just couldn't get it done at the end. But everything until the end, Shapen was a pretty good quarterback. So, and we know Levy's system was effective when it was at OU. So I think Mississippi State won't be the total doormat here. And they took a lot of like our second and third string guys too. So I'm kind of interested in seeing some of the former Texas players get down. Some of the former Texas players. So I do think Mississippi State will be improved this year in year 2 under Levy.
I think they could make a pretty big leap. I haven't looked at their whole schedule. Maybe you pull that up while I talk a little bit.
Sure.
But they lost Craver, which worried me. They lost Van Buren, who I thought was awesome.
So did I. That was a huge loss for them.
But they have Luke Kromanek behind Shapen, who's like big, strong dude, former blue chip. They have a incoming freshman who's 6'4", 230 at quarterback, who was a blue chip. They returned a couple receivers that are actually good. They got Brennan Thompson from Oklahoma out of the transfer portal.
Mm-hmm.
Brennan Thompson really struggled at Oklahoma, but I think in that system,
everyone struggles.
Yeah, and well, I mean, I think in Levy's system, he's going to know how to maximize his speed. And there's some other dudes that can actually like run routes and catch. Their O-line is a little rebuilt.
Here's the trick. I don't think they're going to be meaningfully better in win record here. They're playing Arizona State. What?
Didn't they win like one game last year?
Yeah. So maybe they can get to. I'm talking SEC play here. That's where it's going to be tricky because Tennessee is going to be, a good gatekeeper. A&M's going to be improved. Florida's going to be improved. Texas is good. Arkansas could be a W. Georgia's Georgia. Missouri maybe. Ole Miss is going to be a pretty good gatekeeper. So it's still going to be tough to get those wins, but it doesn't mean that their play didn't get better.
I bet they pull an upset or two. I think they can get to 3 wins in the non-conference. I bet Arizona State beats them. If they beat Arizona State, then they're like almost a lock to make a bowl game. Because, I mean, all those SEC games are tough, but if they only got to win 2, I think they can do that.
Yeah.
And if they have to win 3, then that's going to be tougher, obviously.
It's going to be, I think Thompson's going to be a good replacement for Craver too, because those are both kind of speed guys. So we'll see how that goes. But I do think Mississippi State's play on the field will be improved. But I think a fatal flaw was losing Van Buren for the future. He was like when he was on Rivals, he was like a former 5-star for a little bit out of DC. And then he just kind of fell off. I think he's a really good player. Letting him go to LSU, I think, was a major, major mistake. But I don't think they really necessarily had a choice in that regard if LSU wanted to show up and pay for that play, you know.
I thought that too until I looked at who they had coming in instead. And I was like, I think Levy can work with these guys. I think this may have been a win-win. They're not like a win for Mississippi State, but like
minimizing loss.
And then for LSU, I think it's awesome. I think Van Buren is a very promising player.
For sure.
And he gets to sit a year behind Nussmeier, so
yeah.
Arch's BFF.
Yeah, they're Canes commercials.
Yeah.
They have to do together. It's a tough part of being an athlete. Now you got to be an actor too, man. It's a little bit of a trip. All right. But his whole family can do it. Like Cooper can act, Archie can act. It's all of them. What a unique skill set from that family.
I saw. I was watching the Tom Brady roast the other day. I was with these friends, and
I never watched it, but I heard it was brutal.
Peyton Manning's bit is pretty good. He just knows how to do it. The delivery, like a lot of his jokes were corny.
Yeah.
But like him in on those State Farm commercials with Brad Paisley, he always just nails the delivery.
One, the SNL skit where he's the mean quarterback and he's trying to get the kids to play well.
Yeah.
Yeah, like his comedy chops are there too. And of course, they're on their Monday night live thing they do. They're super funny. That family is just a very unique set of skills, just likable guys.
Just like smart and gregarious.
Yeah. All right, number 5, Texas A&M. So this was interesting, but Ian's logic here makes sense because we do think they're going to be one of the best teams, but there's some other factors here at why they're number 5.
Yeah, I like that. For Texas, I like that they play this game, last game of the year. When they hired Elko, I was kind of nervous. I was like, they just hired like a physical smash mouth coach that's going to build tough defenses and run games, and then Texas is going to have to play them in the last game every year. That's going to be kind of tough. But for now, I kind of like it because I just don't know I don't know if A&M's depth is going to be there. Like last year, for sure, by the time the Aggies got to the Longhorns, they had like nothing left, right? Like all their weaknesses had been laid bare by the SEC schedule, and they lost Moss, Le'Veon Moss. They were down to Marcel Reed. Marcel Reed was having to do everything for them, which was way beyond his capacity as like a decision maker. They're like NFL D-line had like given up, and we're just like waiting to get in shape for the draft. Shouldn't be that bad for A&M, but I like that it's a home game for Texas. Don't they play like?
Here's what's weird. I don't like that it's a home game. Sark to me has been pretty nails on the road. Like I've liked our mentality on the road. I thought we've actually been flatter at home several times. I think the moment now Georgia's a good team, but they beat our brakes off. I think back to like when TCU came and we were putting up nothing burgers. We're still a winning team, so we win at home all the time. But I think our mindset has been actually better on the road than it has been at home. I think and I don't know if this is a we or maybe a Quinn thing or what, but it felt like we would get a little bit more clammy in front of our home crowd.
I don't know if I would like more examples. Like Georgia was.
We're a winning team, so there's not going to be a ton of examples. But I'm saying we haven't lost a true road game since 2022. They
haven't played a lot of tough road games since 2022.
Yeah, we haven't played a ton of tough home games either. And the ones we have played, TCU and Georgia, we couldn't even do anything. So that's kind of my thing where I feel like we're stronger on the road. Just I like our mentality on the road. I think it matches like Sark's mentality. I like it better when we go to Michigan and that kind of stuff. We'll see with Ohio State, but Alabama, good home road. We did some good stuff in the Big 12 on the road.
I need more examples. Like TCU was a better team than Texas that year. The Texas defense played awesome in that game with like Terrence Brooks blew a coverage or two.
It was really our offenses got totally impotent versus Georgia.
That TCU team was good. And Georgia came in with their backs against the wall because they'd lost to Alabama. And as we saw demonstrated over 2 games, they were the perfect matchup for Texas. And they were just – so you got any other examples? I don't know. Because I feel like I watched Texas –
Well, we're a winning team. We don't have
some teams away at home where it was like just –
Well, we've lost like, what, 6 games in the past 2 years, so there's not going to be a ton of examples.
Yeah, but even like Arkansas and Vanderbilt on the road got a little hairy last year. Those were tougher games. Whereas like they blew open the game against Mississippi State after a little while. And that was brutal. I was actually there in the stands and it was so hot and miserable.
Yeah, it looked like it.
They blew Clemson out on offense. Florida got completely swept away. It feels like with how big and loud DKR is now that like there's like if you start to get behind Texas nowadays in DKR, you can just get your doors blown off.
Yeah. But if we don't get the doors blown off, it's struggle. That's the tricky part, right? Because the home losses were to good teams. Both one was Georgia, one was a TCU. I don't know, man. I like this team's vibe more on the road. We'll see. And then also, man, I need an example where they
underperformed, like at home. I don't know if you've given me an example where they like underperformed.
TCU was underperformance at home. We literally could not. We
could
not
play for the national championship.
Not because their defense.
Yes.
No, their defense was like 20-something. It was a good defense.
They had like 12 tackles for loss on Michigan.
Yeah, but it was their offense why they were in it. It wasn't their defense. It wasn't a top 5 defense type of thing. And I don't know how much of this is.
That was a good defense.
Exactly, a good defense. It wasn't a great. It wasn't a great defense. It was a good defense, and so that's kind of my thing.
Texas was not that good. They had Quinn had been kind of exposed, and his confidence was all shaken. And it was like everybody had kind of figured out, like, if you just stop Bijan, there's nothing else they can do.
So here's my thing. That was my point. How much of that is Sark and how much of that is Quinn? And so that's what we'll have to see too with Arch, because like I said, we've had Quinn this whole time too. So it's kind of tricky. We had no business only scoring 1 off it. That's what I agree with.
They played like TCU started playing like 9 in the box in that game. And like, what was Texas going to do? They didn't have answers for that.
Throw the football, but that was the problem.
They couldn't throw the football.
I know.
I think we're giving Texas that year too much credit and TCU too little. AR says we underperformed versus UK last year. That was really only because Quinn destroyed his ankle in that game. And that
was also because we started doing that weird second half meltdown. It would just started being weird turnovers and just doing like strange stuff versus Kentucky.
His ankle was a huge factor.
Yeah, but we started fumbling. That game was weird. Like that was a weird example.
Did they put Jarrett Gibson in and he like immediately fumbled it?
Yeah, it was one of those things where we were just like, what is going on, man? Like it just play after play, it was just like it felt like we were trying to lose. So that's my main thing when it's just like, hey, we have this game at home, it doesn't always ring as powerfully to me as it could. But we'll see this year. We need more data points. The problem is we're a good team, so we're already limited on data points of losing. So we have to see. Texas A&M also with last year, man. Texas A&M had a theoretical shot at SEC championship. That was too big of a moment for them. And then they had built this whole game and like taken it into their identity. And so they stressed themselves out with, their unreasonable expectations all the time. So we'll see this year at home, but we do think that A&M is going to be a lot better in year 2 versus Elko. I think Klein's a good offensive coordinator. I think Elko's a good defensive coordinator. And I think year 2 in a good system is generally going to be a fairly sizable jump, but still number 5 for those factors.
If Marcel Reed starts bringing the playbook aboard the PJ, then all bets are off.
Yeah, dude. If he flies to the game, it's over, dude. We should have beaten the Aggies by at least 14 more points. Right. Good point there, too, right? Like, we beat them handedly, but we also started doing weird stuff and let them kind of theoretically back in the game for a second until we did that goal line stop. Number 4. Actually, before we go to number 4, guys, let's hear a word from our sponsor, David McClellan.
I'm just going to say, guys, you probably need a fiduciary financial advisor. And I've got the guy for you. His name is David McClellan with Forum Financial. He works broadly and deeply with his clients as a financial life coach. And he should know something about coaching because he won several national championships as a swimmer for the University of Texas. He specializes in financial planning and has contributed numerous articles to Kiplinger on the topic of retirement tax bombs. So contact David today to be your fiduciary financial planner and schedule a 1-hour consultation to assess your financial situations. The free consultation is available, so just give him a call. The number is 312-933-8823. That's 312-933-8823. His email is also in the description below.
All righty. Number 4. Where's our boy? Where's he at?
The Sooner champ something?
Yeah, Sooners Cowboys. We're about to talk about you boys. All right, number 4, Red River.
That's actually kind of funny.
He's fun, man. He comes in here. There's people that have fun and are actually funny, and then there's just like, Texas sucks. They're boring, but occasionally you get a rival fan that's actually pretty funny. All right.
Off-season Champ Nation is an outstanding burn for Texas.
Yeah. All right, number 4, Red River shootout, man. Are you coming more along on OU, or are you still standing pat that you think they're not going to have a good season? Where are you at? Have you evolved or devolved in your opinion there?
No, I don't think they're going to have a good season. I think they're going to win like 6 or 7 games. I think there's a lot more things that can go wrong for them that can go right. But they have a super underrated defense. Their offense was so bad last year that their defense has gotten a little underrated, because when you talk about OU, you just talk about like they are just a complete mess on offense. But that team, man, and they bring back almost everybody. They have some D tackles that are like so quick and troublesome. They have our Mason Thomas back. They have a couple other guys at defensive end that could potentially be problems after this offseason. I don't know. They may not be quite as good on defense as last year. There's some reasons they could slip, but there's just a lot that, most importantly for this discussion, there's a lot that can make them dangerous if they play their best game of the year against Texas. Mm-hmm. And they will do everything they can to play their best game of the year against Texas.
Yeah, it'll be early as usual, so their health should be fairly good. And then also,
they do have Auburn and Michigan first, which hurts.
I was going to say, so I didn't even remember Auburn, but I'll say they have Michigan. So it's not like they can just, play FCS and then just wait for Texas. So they are going to have to game plan other teams, which is good, because sometimes it's frustrating because it feels like, you can just work all off season up until our game plotting. So there's a little bit of a difference there.
Yeah.
They should have one of the best defensive lines in the SEC, which we know matters. We've seen what a good defensive tackle room can do for you. Venables' scheme is fun, man, and hard to decipher for quarterbacks. And then you do add Mateer and Arbuckle, who's very competent OC. So their defense, didn't look as good last year, but when your offense is 3 and out and throwing interceptions and backing you up, your defense can't play at its max. So if they go from historically one of the worst offenses OU's ever had to competent even, it's a very different proposition for this team. And like we said, there's the Mateer factor. There's some issues with him over relying on the run, but he's got the arm, he's got the fun play style, and he's got the ability to play hero ball. So OU is an interesting team to keep an eye on all year.
He's the kind of guy that can just give you fits. If he has one of those games where it's like he's going to run the ball 20 times.
Yep, and it's going to be a draw, and it's going to be the most obvious draw ever. Everyone's going to be spread out to the sidelines, and we're still somehow not going to see it coming.
I mean, they're going to – if Arbuckle is worth anything as an OC, he's going to look at how Texas played like 4x1 last year or 4x0, and he's going to draw up some quarterback run RPOs out of that where it's like, are you going to cover Deion Burks in the flat with 4 removed, or are you going to – keep your linebackers in the box for Mateer? There's a chance that Texas just spies him all day with Colin Simmons or something and just obliterates them because he's used to doing all this stuff in the backfield to create space, and he can't do it against Colin Simmons.
Well, and if you watched like last year, I mean, they didn't play good competition. And anytime they played good competition, they lost, and so it was – that's the thing too, is that not only jumping up to the SEC, this is jumping up to like real, Power 5. Because last year, that's not a Power 5 schedule. They were playing in the Power 5.
Washington State.
Talking about Washington State.
Arbuckle. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like last year they invited all the G5s and were able to beat up on them. But Boise State gave you a really good game plan for Mateer, which was, what was your piece the other day? Unleash the dogs. If you're able to do that, Mateer is going to struggle in his decision making, whether to run or to pass.
Washington revealed some warts too, because Washington was like, we're going to play man coverage and get pressure in your face, and you prove to us that you can make spontaneous plays to sustain multiple drives over the course of a game. And did Washington beat them? It was like a 1-score game.
I think they did beat them. I can look it up.
It worked pretty well. He really struggled. I don't think he's really that great at beating man coverage with his arm. He's really good at making quick reads where like they like draw up air raid designs to flood a zone.
Washington State won by 5 points.
So he got the job done, but it was mostly because like Washington didn't do anything on offense.
Yeah, it was year 1 for them.
Yeah. So there's a lot of reason to think that Texas might be able to demolish Mateer. There was this game in I think it was the 2020 Red River Shootout. Sam Ehlinger just started scrambling and running around like crazy and led this furious comeback and almost beat Oklahoma and took it to overtime. And then finally, towards the end of the game, Oklahoma was like, okay, we're gonna rush 3, and we're gonna play Nick Benito as a spy on Ehlinger, and stop trying to play disciplined pass rush. Like if he scrambles, Benito will chase him. Otherwise, we're playing coverage. We're not sending the house. And then once they started doing that, Ehlinger could not beat Benito to any angle. And the whole Texas that was all Texas had. So the whole thing dried up, and Oklahoma pulled it out.
It's funny because the coaches spend so long schematically X's and O's on these games. You see a lot of cool stuff. But almost always it ends up with one team just flipping the table and like not even, just going, hey, screw it, scramble. And that's what's so weird about this game is it starts really highly technical and then it just kind of devolves into hero ball. So it's going to be interesting, man. And hopefully Michigan can kind of show us something. That's the good part of OU having to play some teams early, that hopefully you see some strategies that work against the OU offense before we have to play them.
But I already think if you rush 3, maybe 4, and you spy Mateer with Simmons or Trey Moore and play man coverage, I don't know that they can do anything.
Well, Mateer likes man coverage because gonna say, well, Mateer likes man coverage because it gives him backs turns to run. So like
Yeah.
that's why. So that's why, but he doesn't like man coverage as far as passing.
Yeah.
know?
But if backs are turned, except for Trey Moore, Colin Simmons, it's not going to do him any good.
Yeah, that's going to be a really fun game.
It's possible Texas could blow them out, but you got to give respect to how much Oklahoma's going to put into that game, and the fact that as bad as Oklahoma has looked and as bad as they may look this year against their schedule, they're not actually a bad team. They're like a middling SEC team that's just like in over their skis.
Yeah, and if they played in other conferences, they'd be a good-looking team.
Yes, especially maybe this year. If they went into the Big 12 this year, they would probably be in the top 3 or something.
Yeah. I'm just interested. What I'm interested in seeing Arch in that environment, because Arch likes to play make. I want to see Arch in a big rivalry game because I want to see if either he'll rise to the occasion or he's going to try to force it. So that's what I'm interested to see with his play style, because he's still young. He's not young. He's still inexperienced as far as coordinators throwing the book at him, and Venables is going to throw the book at him.
That's the other thing.
So, and also, Arch isn't scared to run in that situation. The same thing we say about Mateer, right? Like, yeah, but don't get hurt. It's the same thing with Arch. I want to see if he's under pressure, if he just tries to go playmaker with his legs. And it might work, but it also, there's always the downside right there. Ian, go ahead and get us $5, dude.
Connor, it's 10:19 a.m.
And OU sucks.
OU they still do.
They we'll see. We'll see. There is a football fan in me. I'm excited to watch OU this year.
They're a terrific hate watch.
One of the most exquisite hate watches out there. All right, so this was number 3, Ohio State. This is where we could get into some fan controversies. How dare you say that about the reigning national champions, putting them at number 3? What are you thinking, Ian?
I think playing them week 1 is a big advantage for Texas. Julian's saying, now, obviously, Ohio State is going to do all they can all summer to prepare Julian Sayin for this game. But that's a tall task to face this Texas defense in your first. He hasn't even played in a college football game yet, right?
Yeah, it's so weird how they don't apply their logic to Julian Sayin, but it's all, we don't know about Arch. We don't know about Arch, but they don't question Sayin not having any experience. It's weird.
And he's like, it's possible that Texas doesn't have a great targeted game plan. It's possible. But it doesn't seem like it'd be that hard to target it. Like, you want to take away his first read to like Jeremiah Smith or whoever is in the slot now, Max Clare, Ennis Gaines or Brandon Ennis. I can't remember which of those two that guy's name is. Pressure up the middle in his face. He is short. Yeah. If you can flush him out and then still have one of your better edge rushers out there, which Texas can do because they have Anthony Hill at middle linebacker and Leon Galafau and Brad Spence and etc. Flush him from the middle, chase him down with Moore or Simmons. I don't think he's going to be up for it. He may have been up for it if they played him later in the year. We'll see what his composition is like as a football player. But in week 1, that's so brutal to get that. And then obviously
this caliber of pass rush from so many positions, we can put our second string in and they're going to play like a first string rusher. You're going to have the most incredible, lineup of wide receivers, but man, attack the head there, man. And that's Sayin. And he's, like you said, he's a shorter guy. So the vision's going to be limited. You can bring pressure from a ton of places. They're going to try to simplify the offense in game 1. To me, the answer is like, can they get that run game going? I mean, you have to do that to support a Sayin, especially if he's getting overwhelmed. So that'll be a trick. Was that you that posted them rep and duo cuts?
Yeah. They're gonna run it at Texas if they can, and they're gonna do that as much as Texas shows that they are allowed to.
OU sucks. There's some gusto there.
OU sucks, especially in their organization right now. Their Nagy is like clearly like steering the ship right now.
For sure. Just force him to take check down all game, and he will get impatient.
That could be true. They're gonna play. They're gonna throw like a million different ways to get into Tampa 2 against him. They did some of that against Howard in the playoff, and it's gonna be like you could scramble, take your chances in the open field against a bunch of guys that are faster than you and want to hurt you.
This team too, specifically for Texas, like we said, they're bigger athletes. So it's like these are big guys. Like Johnny McDonald can smack you. Derek Williams can smack you. We have some pretty sizable athletes too. Will it end up being which QB makes less mistakes? I mean,
it usually is, but I don't think that's like the.
To me, it's the run game. So it's like that. So of course, yeah, that's always going to be kind of true. But to me, it's like, can Ohio State get the run game going? And
also the other way too, right?
Yeah, I mean, Texas has to get their run game going, and we have to convert in the red zone, man. Like that's been the absolute death of us. And so that's going to be the huge thing. That's my most important thing this year. Is the red zone scoring a SARC issue globally, play selection, coaching in practice, emphasis in practice, or was it Quinn being limited? Can we fix the interior run game? All that stuff is a huge question mark for me that I'm really excited to see. Okay.
They have Ohio State has a lot of D-line questions. A lot of D-line questions.
We'll see. Number 2 at Florida, man. I agree. That's why I agree with the list. I think Florida is going to be a real contender this year, and not just for Lagway. Everyone immediately goes to Lagway. This is a really well-built team in the trenches. They've got a first-round edge in Sap. Their offensive line is, they got a center Slaughter page for the first round too. It's not often you see a center going in the first round. So they have it on the offensive line. That's going to be important. And they have a tough play style, man. There's a lot of gap schemes. They're a tough running team. So this is not just the Lagway show. They're building correctly in the trenches. That's what's going to matter here with Florida. And then, of course, we kind of ran up score on them last year. They're not going to forget that.
There's all that. There's also Texas plays them after a bye week, which is nice, but the week before the Red River Shootout.
Yeah.
On the road in the swamp. Great team. I think Florida has a chance to play for the SEC championship. DJ Lagway we argued about this on a live like a couple weeks ago. I think DJ Lagway, if they wanted him to, could run it 10 or 15 times in this game and give us a ton of fits from that. It's just to me, this is like kind of like a schedule loss. So they, and you probably don't know. In the NBA, they'll have like back-to-backs. Or like games or like times where a team will get like 3 games in 4 days or 3 games in 5 days. And so one of those games everybody just calls a schedule loss where it's like you're just going to be too tired, too jet lagged, and you're just not going to have it. And it almost doesn't matter who the other team is.
And this feels like it's going to be an emotional game, a kind of drag out game. One of those ones that if you come out leaving as a win, it might not be the emotional high you want before OU as well. So now maybe you're looking not as sharp in OU. If you had to split these games, you would still want to get the win versus OU.
Yes.
Because A, it's rivalry, but B, they won't be as good as Florida. So you don't want a loss to a team not as good. If you're going to lose to one of them, you want to lose to Florida because they're going to have a better record. So it'll be a more of a quality loss. Of course, you want to win both, but this is a way tougher schedule for Texas this year. Than last year. And last year, we were just getting lucky with injured quarter. I mean, we played just garbage offense after garbage offense with an elite defense. This year won't be the same case. We're going to play some full-strength offenses. So, yeah, it's going to be tough, man. And like I said, I think they're going to have that game circled. And DJ Lagway, can't forget, that's a Texas kid.
Did you ever read Did you ever read Bill Simmons back in the day when he was a writer and he would do like NFL picks? Just as soon as you were like a baby.
Yeah.
But he used to have this thing called the kitchen sink game, where like one team just has to have this game and the other team doesn't. And that's not really been a thing in college football because the schedules are, for the top teams, the schedules are so like unbalanced, and like you have like 2 or 3 games you're really worried about. The other games, it's like, let's show up and make sure we play with good focus and we'll be fine. But the SEC it's always been a little bit like this, but now it's getting a lot like this, where there's so much parity and so many teams that are dangerous that you can get into these games where it's like, how much does this game mean to this team and how much does this game mean to this team? And if there's not balance there, then you have the opportunity. There's like a gazillion more upsets that can occur because of that dynamic.
Yeah.
And also the environments, the road environments. I don't think I don't think last year prepared Texas fans for how difficult it can be to win on the road in the SEC.
Yeah, in the Big 12, you're used to playing like 40 caps and stuff like that in the Big 12. Like you're like, oh, 40,000. I mean, the SEC, it's just like 100,000, 100,000, 100,000, 100,000. It's crazy.
And they have like, it's like a team that you think is maybe not that good. And then it's like, oh, they got this dude we can't block. This didn't happen in the Big 12.
If Texas only loses one game, which game would y'all prefer it to be? So there's 2 ways to think about it. Just like emotionally, I don't want to lose to Georgia. I want Sark to, we've created that narrative. Texas is a good team. Sark's a good team, but and I think you say it, until you can, knock the champ out, you can't be the champ. So I don't want to lose to Georgia. But realistically, losing to Georgia doesn't mean that much. If they're a good team, you can just rematch them. So I don't know if the strategy answer is Georgia, but the feeling is Georgia. And I'm not including the Oklahoma A&M rivalry part. I'm just trying to think. Georgia means more to me this season as like a litmus test. What do you think?
I'm already prepared to lose to Florida, so that one's not going to bother me.
I would prefer it to be Florida because they're not a historical test for us. They're going to be a good team, so it'll be quote unquote a quality loss. You might get to rematch them, that kind of thing. I don't want to just have somebody rise up like Kentucky or Vandy or and punch us, because then you're going to be an Ole Miss situation where you have a bad loss. So whoever we lose to of the good teams, I'd prefer it to be Florida because there's not this like narrative surrounding that.
Yeah, you don't want to lose your season opener at Ohio State. It's not
For
fun.
sure. Yeah.
You never want to lose to Oklahoma. You never want to lose to Texas A&M.
Yeah.
And
you don't want to lose to Georgia again just for
all the baggage you just said. Yep.
Yeah.
That's 3 in a row if you lose to Georgia.
Yeah. And that's kind of what keeps you from Texas is good, but they're just not quite in that elite tier yet, if they don't beat Georgia. Florida's kind of a different thing because everyone's already hyping Florida, including us. So it'd be like, see, we told you Florida's good, and not just Texas sucks. Texas loses to Georgia, they're like, see, we told you can't beat smart.
It's actually unpleasant is if Texas got blown out on the road at Georgia this year and then went on to win the national championship without playing them again.
Right.
You would still have questions.
Right.
You'd be like, oh, that's great, but what happens if you have to beat Georgia to do it?
Right.
Kind of like I don't care what anyone says. There's no way that Ohio State fans feel that great about the fact that they lost to Michigan again last year.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah.
It's still just like, and this game is not on that level, but just you don't want that. You don't want that doubt and that narrative. Or maybe you do. Maybe you do to motivate the team. I don't know. But
as a fan, you don't want that narrative. Having to defend the team on Twitter, you don't want that narrative.
Yeah, you don't want to have to. Yeah, exactly.
Play that game. All right, number 1. Speak of the devil. The toughest game should still be Georgia. We were looking at their edges. Their top edge right now, projection. Of course, they could have somebody rise. Is the Army transfer, which is not anywhere near the talent of Michael or Jalen Walker or any of that. So maybe this year is not as crazy on the defensive line. But here's the thing about Georgia. They're not just talent. They're incredibly well coached. So it's like, even if the quote unquote, they don't have 3 first rounders on that line, they have an astute awareness of pass protections and how to break them and how to rattle quarterbacks. And they're going to be up for this game. I mean, Georgia played hair on fire versus us, and then you'd watch another game and they didn't even look like Georgia. So when Kirby Smart and his little cadre of defensive minds set their sights fully on you and game plan you, they see Sark as a equal in that regard, and they throw everything at him. All right, Mr. Offensive Coordinator, let's see what you got. So even if they don't have all the first round talent there, it doesn't mean that they won't be able to at least scheme something up for you. What do you think?
They have, I'm looking at their roster, their depth chart right now. They have 6 guys that are end outside linebacker types that were blue chips out of high school.
Of course.
You just haven't heard of them yet.
Correct.
Except for I counted Elo Mendoza in that. He was not a blue chipper out of high school, but he is a freak. He's the Army kid that we talked about. They love to blitz the linebackers, and they have, I think, basically 2 starting linebackers back. They're both blue chips. They have blue chips behind them. They have 5 stars behind their starting linebackers that are both second-year players that you just haven't heard of yet. They got Dalen Everett back at corner, 8 Texas alive in the SEC championship game. Could not believe how well he played. They got KJ Bolden back. They got a bunch of transfers in the secondary.
And incredibly well coached.
Incredibly well coached. They have those defensive tackles that mauled Texas last year. Some of them are gone. Some of them are back. I feel like it's a fake concern that I think Georgia has much bigger concerns than whether or not their second-year blue chips are going to, whether or not enough of those guys are going to make the leap for them to be great on defense again.
That's the only advantage, is that we can't name them. Like normally by name, you're like, they have this guy coming back. But once again, it doesn't mean that one or more players are not going to rise. Because like we said, the talent's there. That system's been in place. You're getting molded from day one. And they're also going to show you something on this game. And also, we got to figure out our pass protections and like how they cannot pick them apart like that. That was also concerning because they didn't just beat us through talent. They beat us by leveraging their talent against scheme weakness. And some of that stuff was psychic, dude. Like that first game, I was like, do they have our signs? Like, because they were just in the right spots on a ton of that stuff. And I just think it's because either they picked our signs, which is fair play, or another non-conspiracy version is just they were plotting on us. And they knew kind of what we were going to do. They understood Sark's scheme very well.
I think they had given Texas some extra attention, even if only the week of. They were, also like none of us really knew who Jalen Walker was before the game last year.
Yeah, and then
he broke out in that game and had like 7 sacks in that game alone or something. And we're like, I remember walking out with Rod of Disaster on the board from the stands, and we talked to some Georgia dudes, and I was like, I saw some Georgia guys, and I was like, hey, where did Jalen Walker come from? Who was that person? And they're like, we don't know. We're glad he's here. We had never seen anything like that from him before.
And then Mike Hill was so special. He was coming off of injury, and he had dealt with that, but man, his like first step off the line, that mix of speed and power, man, that was a special end. But I do think, man, that was also just a disaster match for Quinn's play style. So hopefully a more mobile quarterback, but we'll see. They also haven't lost a home game since like 2018. Yeah, but also they don't play big home games. Like that's Georgia fans' like biggest gripe. Like that's why they're super excited for this year because they're getting some real home games. But like they, when they were in the East, there wasn't a lot of good teams in the East. And so they just, and they get all their damn postseason games in Atlanta. So it's like their home games are actually more their postseason. But I know Georgia fans are excited to play at home. But also, I like this dynamic, because like Sark was like, oh, we don't care about Saban not losing at home. And then as soon as we won, they were like, did you know this was only the second team to beat Saban at home? So this kind of narrative works too, like telling your team, like, no one's came in here and beat Georgia in all these years. It can also work for the opposing team too.
Here's a great thought on this. Maybe more worth discussing than Arkansas. What's the bigger win for Texas this year? Winning the season opener at Ohio State, assuming that Ohio State's like good again, like maybe even playoff good, or winning at Georgia?
Winning at Georgia. 2 reasons. The beginning of the season is the biggest deal in the world because we haven't seen football, right? So Texas beats Michigan. Now, Michigan wasn't that good. It's the biggest thing. People forget about those conference games and they minimize them the further you get from them. So the recency bias of beating Georgia at home, it's just a closer game. The narrative that Sark can't beat Georgia. Georgia is even though Ohio State has won, Georgia's still kind of thought of as the primo brand. That's, to me, it's Georgia matters more.
But that'll also fade if there's a meaningful postseason.
Yeah, but it'll still be closer than the Ohio State game by a good margin. So it's honestly, I'm playing mostly on recency bias and narrative bias.
But think about how hype it'll be around Texas if, like, say, Arch Manning goes into Columbus and just torches the defending champs, and then everything after that is the opposite of like that Texas Notre Dame game, and it's like, and Ohio State was actually good.
That'll be the trick, right? Because
knocking over teams.
Well, whoever loses this game is going to automatically suck. And then you have to wait for the rest of the year to see what happens. It's like Michigan where they just kind of lost and that win became less valuable. So sure, if you cook Ohio State and they end up being an 11-win team after that year, they're only lost, then yeah, that's great. But I still think it's Georgia, dude. Barring that Georgia plays up to their caliber.
What if it's like a narrow loss to Georgia on the road and Arch plays well, and then they beat Ohio State however they beat them?
Well, this is what's going to happen. If Arch torches Ohio State, the narrative will be they lost all that talent when really they only lost like one more NFL player than us.
Yeah.
So the irony will be they'll immediately Texas. I think there's also this dream, Ian, that like then we'll finally get our due as Texas fans. Then the college football world will finally stand up and say, you know what, Texas, you're an elite team, when really they're just going to minimize whatever happens. If you beat Georgia, Georgia is de facto not the Georgia of the past. If you beat Ohio State, well, of course, man, they're starting Julian Sain and they lost all these players to the NFL. So it's just, I think there's just this thing in our heart where like, then they'll finally stand up and clap for Texas, and it just won't happen. You win the national championship and they're going to be like, yeah, the good teams do it 2 or 3 times. I just don't think we'll ever get our due regardless.
If they win the national championships, how you do that.
That's what I'm telling you. Then they'll say, well, can you win 2? Well,
Sure.
The dynasty's won 3. So I'm saying it's just this hedonistic treadmill where it's never going to be enough in that regard. You'd have to have like an LSU Joe Burrow type season for everyone just to be like, all right.
I will say this though. If the media is talking about you and what you haven't proven, then you've already arrived.
I agree. Because I mean, that was Michigan, right? Until they won it. That was Ohio State till they won it again. It was like the hang around the rim teams constantly can they get over the hump? And then you hit a development cycle. So there's development cycles like the Big 12 that Paul talks about, but there's also mini development cycles amongst the elite. And so it's like this mini edge you get like Michigan or Ohio State where Georgia takes a step back that year and opens the door, that kind of stuff. So if you hang around the rim long enough too, you'll be able to overpower it eventually.
Or you're healthier.
Yeah, or you're healthier.
Or you get the right matchups in the way to the title.
Yeah. But also I feel like too with this playoff thing where when you win the championship, it's really hard to argue with now because it's not just you beat a quarterfinal team and then you got in where people can be like, well, you got an easy matchup. Now, if you win the playoffs, you had to beat 3 or 4 good teams to get to that win. So it's also makes it more credible of a champion than it has been in the past, especially in the BCS where you just got to show up and had to play one game. So hopefully that will kind of change a little bit too, because Ohio State lost to Michigan, but there was no question that they were the best team in the country by what they proved in the playoffs.
Yeah. That's
All right,
a game changer.
All right, let's do Arkansas really quick, and then we can hit the wrap.
Here's the clip notes of the 2025 Arkansas Razorbacks. They lost a gazillion players. They rebuilt the roster from the transfer portal, and they did it like the smart way, where you get proven guys that were starters at smaller schools, and then you were like, hey, you want to make SEC money and play in the SEC? And they say yes, and then you restock your roster. They have a gazillion solid players. They have an identity on offense and on defense. They're going to be the flyover 3 deep on defense. They have huge safeties. One of their safeties is like 6'1", 220, and one of them is like 6'4", 225. Kind of like how Iowa State does it, where they're like sitting back, so you're like, well, we got to run. Everybody's backed off,
and then they fly in.
You run the ball, and they fly in with huge people, and it's like they have like 7 linebackers on the field. It feels like. They have an offensive identity with gun option plays with Taylor Green. They got him a bunch of really solid G5 receivers.
I was going to say, what are they going to do? Because they lost their number 1. I can't remember his name, but Armstrong. Yeah, he got like every pass. That guy was fun.
They got a couple of guys that are.
They lost Satania to OU.
Yeah. They rebuilt their offensive line, which Texas destroyed in the pass rush last year. I think they're going to be very solid across the board. I don't think they have enough game breakers to actually pull ahead of very many SEC teams.
But you think that they could also keep other teams from pulling super far ahead too, right?
I think they're going to lose a lot of 28-16.
Okay, yeah.
If you can place option sound and you don't get impatient and lose your way against their 3 deep, then you should beat them. But if you're vulnerable to either of those 2 challenges, then look out, because that's gonna super elevate their ability to play as a group. They don't have a lot of stars, but if they can play as a group within their identity, and you don't have answers, you don't have the discipline or the scheme or whatever to handle it, then they're going to be a huge problem.
How do you think Arch will do against the 3 high?
That is a very good question. I don't really
Sark hasn't necessarily blown the doors off of it, so
he's I don't think he's had a single day against it that I would call was really good against Arkansas's version.
Yeah.
Against some other schools' version, he's had a couple really nice games. But against Arkansas, I don't think he's had a single really good one.
Well, we're gonna naturally run a lot of gap too and overload a lot of the sides. So that's a decent run scheme versus it. So luckily our running focus will be a good running focus versus this style of defense. Now,
sometimes what Sark has done against it is be patient and just control the game.
Mm-hmm.
And if they could probably do that, like beat them 20-10 again, 24-13, where it's like, hey, if they have one really good drive, this is a game, but you always keep them like at arm's length.
But also, man, there's some YOLO factor here. Like you said, their safeties are huge. Okay, well, is DeAndre Moore in the slot going to run right by them? So it's also like, who was it? Old Miss that was like cute 3 high. We're throwing everything deep. So there's also this thing too where, great. I'm glad you have run stopping safeties. Can they cover the pass?
Yeah, that there's a chance that they could blow them out. Sark knows what to do there. You go 5 wide. You put those big safeties in space on matchups that they don't want to be in, and you can really get them. Sark has shown that a million times before now. He did it against Mississippi State last year, the big DeAndre Moore throw. He did it a couple times against Iowa State in 2021, and Texas just missed the throws.
Correct.
They had like Xavier Worthy like running wide open down the field in Ames. Maybe somebody else too. Yeah, I'm not super worried about it.
Cool. Final thing, don't sleep on UTEP. Walden built a defense first, but couldn't score in year one. This year recruited offense in year two, including Malachi. Is that Malachi? What's his last name? Lemon? Is that Malachi Lemon or is that Nelson?
Okay.
Isn't his name? Is it Nelson? I always mix him up with the Lemon.
Watch
one.
out, Malachi Nelson is coming to DKR.
Well, he wasn't even a for sure starter. Like when we were talking in the spring, he was still battling with the first string.
He's trash.
Well, clearly, man, if you go to USC to Boise State to UTEP, you're probably not that good of a competitor. One of the bigger 5-star
The Boise guy ended up being pretty solid, though, I will say.
Yeah, but one of the biggest like 5-star busts so far. And even if you do well at UTEP, what does that even mean?
When I found out that he wasn't a dual threat, I was like, there's no way.
Yeah.
He's like skinny and not a dual threat. Okay.
Yeah.
Why were we a 5-star? He can throw really far. That's not going to matter.
Yeah. Can Arch's legs help against the flyover?
Yes. You don't necessarily want to use Arch's legs a lot in that game. I think that's like the 5th game in a row Texas will have played before the next bye. But yeah, theoretically that would work.
Especially if you're running, countery stuff and then you let the running back lead on top of that. Now you're super overloading a side. So, put in a big back and let him, do counter follow or something like that. Now you have a ton of blockers to one side. So
yeah, absolutely. They could do that any week and be super dangerous.
Yeah. Well, like you said, you really got to pick and choose your spots because Arch goes down. This isn't where Quinn had Arch behind him type thing. We don't know what Caldwell is. We don't know how to represent that. So really, man, the reality is Arch can do cool stuff, but if Arch goes down, it's the season goes down. So you've got to be smart.
I bet they could beat Arkansas with
Caldwell.
Yeah.
All right, cool. Thank you, Ian. Thank you, chat. This was Inside Texas Live, and it was brought to you by Academy Sports and Outdoors. Y'all have a great day. Peace.